I found a way of doing the fourth book, which is huge. It's about nearly 1,000 pages. And Warner Brothers were seriously thinking, did they want to make 2 films of it? And I was very clear that I didn't want to make 2 films of it and said so. I don't know whether you and I had this conversation, but what I felt was that there was enough incident for 2 films, but there wasn't enough story for 2 films. There was only enough story for 1 film. Which then meant, what was I going to do with that? You know, what did I want that story to be? And I was equally clear about that. I was entirely clear that I thought that it should be a version of a conspiracy. It was many things. It was a comedy. It was a school story, both of those very clear genres. But it was also it was a conspiracy theory. So, you know, Dan Radcliffe is Cary Grant, and Cary Grant is a happy ad man who drinks 2 martinis at lunchtime and looks after his mother, and then James Mason starts to do things to him which he doesn't understand. He gets kidnapped and so on and so forth. And I felt that the plot of Harry Potter 4 should be very close to what actually happens in North by Northwest. And it's not, yeah, but it works. The thing is, it might be a sort of comical idea, but I meant it absolutely seriously, because I knew that the jokes were going to come from somewhere else. The jokes were going to come from the kids and from the anarchy.
When you read a screenplay, what is it? And as a director, when you turn it into a film, what are you doing? How are you rewriting or working with the writer to make that something that you can visualize?
There are no rules, and you are only the product of where you came from. And where I came from was amateur theatricals, and I was educated in character. And so character became extremely important to me. And my tutor was, he was an Edwardian, really, and he was the grandson of the great Babbage, who made the first calculating machine back in the middle of the 19th century. And his name was Dr. D.W. Babbage, Dennis Babbage. And he said to me on the first day that I met him, when I first went up, he said, what do you want to do here? And I said, well, I want to get a first, and I want to rove the first, and I want to do this and that. And he said, no, you fool. What do you want to do with your spare time? And I said, I thought I might play about in the theatre. And he said, oh, Christ. Oh, Christ. Well, you'll get a tutu, and I don't expect to see you until your last term. Which was exactly what happened. And what I did was, I did lots and lots and lots of theatre, to the point where I had a great, I despised any other form. I got to be able to read a script for what it was, that was the academic part of it, and for what it could be.
So for the writers out here who want to hook Mike Newell, what do they need to have on the page to attract you?
A good bloke and a bad jam. No, I mean it. It will tend to come from character. And character isn't really very interesting unless it's under a lot of pressure. So a good bloke, Hugh Grant, is in a bad jam. He doesn't really know, he can't get a girl. Or the same could be said of Al Pacino, and so on. So you don't need to say it any more times than that. So it does come from character, but at the same time it also comes from impossible pressure, which is very classical.
And which is the action, the drama.
Yes.
What you're going to shoot.
Yes. 4 Weddings was kind of director-proof, really. You know, it would have taken a colossal act of, I don't know what, to get it wrong. But you you can't claim that for the chemistry, because the thing was a sort of Rubik's Cube. It did everything it was supposed to do at exactly the right time. And so Richard had brought along this absolutely crystalline plot story. It was wonderful. And I remember being very strongly of the opinion that the title was terrible, because what people would do would be to count. And if they weren't having a good time and they were counting, they would, by the time they got to wedding 2 or funeral 1 or whatever, say simply, Christ, we've got 2 more weddings to go, fuck this, and they're off. And I did not think that we should call it 4 Weddings and a Funeral. I really didn't. And I was, of course, entirely wrong. One of the reasons that we cast Hugh was we saw every promising young actor in England. And they were all absolutely wonderful, and there was only one of them who could handle the speaking of it, could actually get his mouth round the jokes and make up a bond between the character and the sort of the feeling that you see him going through, you see in his face, and the speaking of the words.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
You want one of these?
Oh, thank you.
Charles. Hello, John. How are you? How are you? Good, good. This is,
Carrie.
Carrie. Delighted, I'm John.
Hi, John.
So, John, how's that gorgeous girlfriend of yours?
She's no longer my girlfriend.
Ah, dear. Still, I wouldn't get too gloomy about it. Rumour has it she never stopped bonking old Toby Delisle just in case you didn't work out.
She is now my wife.
Excellent. Excellent. Congratulations.
Excuse me.
Any kids or anything, John? Do we hear the patter of tiny feet? No.
And he went off to Australia. Channel 4 got very impatient with us and said, you can't have the money. And we said, well, if you don't give us the money, we can't make it this year. They said, well, so, okay, fine, so don't make it this year. We don't care. It's not that much money, actually. Why don't you bugger off? And at that point, Hugh went off and did a movie in Australia, and then we did get the money. They wanted to start without Hugh, and I said, no, we have to wait for him, because he's the only one who can speak it. And there's a scene right at the end in a thunderstorm, where obviously the fire brigade is in there, and obviously you can't hear a word of the original dialogue. It all has to be, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so awful. We're going to spend days and days and days doing this one scene, and it's never going to be as good. And he came in and he did it on take 2, because he has this extraordinary sense of rhythm, and he knows exactly what he did and exactly how to reproduce it. It's all in his mouth.
And it was all on the page.
And it was all on the page, director-proof.
So tell me about Donnie Brasco. What did that look like when you picked it up, and what did you have to do?
It was very, very, very funny. It was a marvelous piece of writing. A guy called Paul Attanasio, who's just terrific. It was immediately after 4 Weddings, and I could have had anything. Absolutely anything. You know, the film had cost £3 million to make. It had taken $250 million or whatever it was. It was a huge cost to profit ratio. And I didn't want to do the stuff that was coming at me, because it was all Hollywood stuff. I had a company, I had an office, I had a secretary, I had an assistant, I had a reader, I had all these people. They all sat in Hollywood and smiled at me and said, the word is good. But it wasn't. It wasn't at all. And then this very, very clever woman called Betsy Beers, who now produces Grey's Anatomy. She said, there's a script. It's 10 years old. Everybody's had a go at it. And they had. Steve Frears said to me, oh, you went for that one, did you? Which is very Steve Frears. And he'd read it, and everybody had a go at it, and it had got polished and all that kind of stuff, and it had got a patina of excellence on it. And it was wonderful. It was the great thing about it was that it wasn't. It didn't have an interior reference to the genre.
Which was?
Well, The Godfather, which was crime as the grand metaphor, the metaphor being 19th century opera, being and it wanted to be something else entirely. It wanted to be a little Channel 4 films.
You down the jeweler? Yeah. There's some beautiful thing.
Why don't you give it to your wife?
My wife? How am I gonna give it to my wife? I ain't married.
Got a girlfriend?
Yeah, I got a girlfriend, yeah.
So marry her.
Hey, you for real? I'm asking you to meddle a diamond for me here. Now, all I want from my end is 8,000.
What I'm saying to you is you should give it to somebody that don't know any better, because that's a fugazi, all right?
That's a fugazi? How do you know it's a fugazi? You looked at it for 2 seconds.
Well, it's a fake.
But, yeah, I know what a fugazi is.
That's what it really wanted to be.
So, is that what you brought to it? What did you bring to it? You'd come off 4 weddings.
Well,
it had been around for 10 years.
What I brought to it was that that's how I felt it should be. And I didn't have any, and the producer was cool with that. Johnny, before he was Johnny, thought that would be a pretty good thing to do, and Al thought the same. And so these elements came together, which made it doable. You don't read everything that comes in. You probably read 20 pages of everything that comes in. And I'm sorry for that, and that will seem very lazy and cynical and so forth, but you know when something suits you, and you can tell within 20 pages if the thing in a broad way suits you. Sometimes it's not a matter of being lazy. What it is to do with is that the first 10 pages, very often, it's one of the first signs of something not being right. They're too dense. And they're too internally referential. You know, don't ask about that character. Don't ask who he is. Don't ask what he just did. You will find out. Well, the answer to that is I'll find out if it pleases me to find out. Sometimes there are a whole variety of things. Sometimes you become a valuable chip in a hand of chips which a producer holds, script written by, actors directed by, and as soon as his peddler's tray is full, he will go and he will put his new shirt on, and he'll go to the studio and say, I got a horse, I got a horse. That's one way that you get the money.
That's very honest of you, Mike.
Well, it's how it happens, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's also very honest to see yourself in that fashion.
Okay,
so.
but I mean that in the end is how it happens. America has a particular kind of influence. Everybody has to reckon that they are in a business. There's got to be a return on the money. You are in the business of mass entertainment, and you have to be able to take that on board. And then what you do, you juggle destructive forces against constructive forces, don't you? There are many people who are destructive. And at the same time, they're so important, they've got so much that you want, that you've got to deal with that. And so there was a very, very funny quote from a studio executive recently that, I've got it on me somewhere, said he was being asked what the difference between now and 6 or 7 years ago was. And he said, you know, the thing is that directors have got so good at knowing what you want and telling you what you want to hear that I've actually stopped listening to them. I just give them, I give them the stuff that I give them money for the stuff I like. I don't actually listen to them at all. Which of course means that it goes right back to writers. Here we are talking to a director, and when I started in 1963, you were sit up straight at the back and pay attention to the writer. That's what they taught us. And so that's why I can say, I don't know what my style is. My style is the piece. My style is the act of choosing. My style is what gets me about the story and the characters. And you have to, if you want to make some daft theory about what I do, you have to look at that stuff rather than a dropping crane shot in the 52nd minute.
Well, Mike, I think that's a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.